Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session today at JNUC, Achieving Zero Trust while Crafting a Great End User Experience on the Mac with Jamf, Okta, and Venafi. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. My name is Kaylee Carlson, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Jamf, and I'm joined today by Kelsey Nelson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Okta, and Paul Cleary, Ecosystem Architect at Venafi. So over the last several years, organizations have become more modern, and even more so now during this unprecedented time. And because of that, they're asking the question, how can I better secure my devices and information with today's more mobile workforce? So during those conversations, there have been a lot of questions about zero trust, and it's become a more widespread topic of interest, and IT departments are thinking more and more about how identity-based access and device security fit into a zero trust model. So because of that, over the next 30 minutes, we will be discussing the old way of security and how that presents challenges for today's more mobile workforce, what zero trust is and how it can be beneficial in solving these challenges, how organizations can deliver improved security with a zero trust approach by focusing on the people within the organization with identity and access management, and then finally, how to improve device trust beyond just the user. So let's first talk about the old way of security within organizations. So we just mentioned a few moments ago that today's workforce is ever evolving and really looking to combine efficiency and effectiveness in their work. Employees are demanding that employers enable flexible work styles, but with that same user experience that they would have if they were in an office. Apps are moving to the cloud, and more organizations than ever before are examining their remote and work from home policies, be it for health, for employee retention, or for productivity reasons. Whatever the reason is, the days of a 9-to-5 workday exclusively from an office are really coming to an end, as work is really no longer confined by place and time. In fact, in a 2019 study published by Talent LMS, 66% of organizations allowed employees to work remote, and 16% of all employees worked remote full time. And we know that these numbers have grown and will continue as the working world is forever changed. And alongside the workforce, technology is also advancing to connect people and give them access to everything they need from anywhere, from most any device. But this change in working environment and supporting end users does present new challenges for IT admins to maintain security while providing the user experience that employees have come to expect. So all of these factors contribute to the breakdown in the traditional enterprise security perimeter, or as it's been called, the castle and moat approach that many organizations have known for years. The castle and moat model refers to a trusted internal network, or the castle that is protected by a perimeter, or the moat, and anything outside of that perimeter is untrusted. In addition to the changing workforce, we also know that security attacks are becoming more sophisticated, and untrusted entities are sometimes able to breach that perimeter or that outer layer of security. We also know that sometimes things happen within organizations where you have someone that is already deemed trusted and they decide to do something malicious and create a vulnerability within the system. It's these types of threats that have led to the need for a better security model. Essentially, you can no longer consider anyone or anything trusted. Everything must now be thought of as never trust, always verify, which is the foundation for zero trust. So what is zero trust? So zero trust is not a new concept. It's been around for over a decade when it was first developed by Forrester researcher John Kinderbog. And he outlined a concept that throws away trusted internal networks and deems everything as being untrusted. His zero trust concept is based on the following core principles. So first, all resources must be accessed in a secure way from a secure machine, regardless of location. Today, more than ever before, connecting from a particular network should not determine what a user can and cannot access. We work from different places all the time, and where you connect from should not determine what you can access and how you work. Access control is on a need-to-know basis. So once you join a company, you have exactly what you should have access to. And when you leave, you no longer have access to that data or device. So today, a need-to-know basis is based on what we know about you and the device that you're using. And then access is granted based on the answers to questions such as, what group or department are you in, which is based on your cloud identity. What app or apps are you trying to use? What location and network are you logging in from? What device are you on? Is it managed? Is it secure? Is it a device that we've never seen before? The answers to questions like these will determine what services you have access to or what level of authentication policies that you get. And then lastly, organizations must inspect and log all traffic to verify that users are doing the right things, that they're doing the things they should be doing, and nothing more than that. So over the decades since this initial concept was developed, it's been enhanced, it's been revamped into the Zero Trust extended ecosystem, where the central focus of security should be on the users. So putting an emphasis on the people aspect of security, the focus shifts to who accesses your system and the access controls that they have, with identity and access management being a critical component to the people part of that framework. This notion was turned into an achievable reality with advances to cloud identity, coupled with device security and endpoint security solutions, serving as the foundation for modern and secure access controls. Unfortunately, these security requirements generally mean a heavy burden on employees, forcing them to jump through a series of hoops to simply access the resources that they need to get their work done. So all too often, they have multiple accounts, disparate applications, and far too many usernames and passwords to juggle at any given time. So we talked a bit ago about how employees are demanding the same user experience that they would have if they were in an office. And we know organizations are keeping security and a seamless user experience top of mind. So we'll touch on how with Jamf Connect and Okta, we can ensure a high level of user trust by unifying identity across apps and devices in a few minutes. But first, let's dig more into identity-based security and how it's crucial to leading organizations to zero trust access. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Kelsey Nelson, to talk about delivering improved security with identity.
Thanks so much, Kaylee, and thank you all for joining us today. Zero Trust is a topic very, very close to my heart. And as Kaylee mentioned, there's been a big shift in security over the last 10, 15 years to really rethink how we can start to reshape our security for this cloud and mobile world. And I think we're probably all feeling this, the need to do so, even more so due to the recent crisis. As Kaylee mentioned, a lot of those stats on the increase of remote work, and what we're hearing too is that likely that will persist in the years to come. And so how can we start to use solutions like identity and like device to really both enhance the security posture of our organization, but also really critical is that user experience piece that Kaylee just mentioned. So we'll touch a little bit on both and how you can use the identity piece to really set yourself up for longer term success. So when we start talking through identity-driven security, really 4 foundational components of this are what you see here. So one, being able to unify identity across all of your ecosystem. Like Kaylee just mentioned, all of those resources that you need to access, both cloud and on-prem, as well as from any device. We also want to make sure that we're securing that login, that authentication process by enforcing risk-based authentication. And this is, again, really important both for that balance of security posture, but also usability. We want to make sure that by best assessing risk, we can make it even easier for users to get in if it's low risk, but then also put in those extra security controls, things like MFA, for when things are potentially amiss. I think two other areas that are even as important to just being able to deliver access and to strengthen the security controls there are things like provisioning and deprovisioning. Oftentimes we talk about automated provisioning as a really big IT efficiency, and it absolutely is. But there's also a lot we can do to make sure that users are assigned only the resources they need from day one. And then also that we're able to automate the deprovisioning. So removing that latent or orphan accounts. And then, of course, being able to enable that visibility and analytics across your entire ecosystem is going to make things a lot smoother should we see some things in this and that we're able to take action on it. So we'll go through these very quickly in a little more depth. So as we mentioned, being able to unify identity first and foremost with something like a modern SSO experience. And one thing I want to really reinforce here is it's certainly across all applications, but we don't just mean cloud. We also mean on-prem. We also mean things like infrastructure. So when we're approaching this identity-driven security, really what we're looking for here is how can we take that same seamless experience and apply it to everything that a user needs to access, and again, from whatever device they're accessing it from. From there, again, we want to make sure that we're layering on that strong authentication and enforcing risk-based authentication. And actually, I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide here. Really what we mean by risk-based is bringing in a number of different contextual signals or risk signals. And that can be absolutely from something like your identity provider, but ideally from across your security stack. So we can start to get some insights into what resources this user trying to access. Is it a high value? Is there certain data in here that we want to be extra cognizant of? The user group, where is this user coming from? What is their role? Are they a developer? Are they an executive? What part of the organization are they in? Marketing, finance? Certainly things like the network that they're authenticating from. The device, again, which of course we'll get into more here shortly. And the location, right? If we see that someone is authenticating from San Francisco in the morning and then Texas in the afternoon, maybe raise some flags. Is that still the same user? And so by pulling in all of these different risk signals, we're starting to get a better picture of, is this a normal behavior for this user? And if not, maybe I want to step up authentication and require a second factor before I allow access into that resource. Now, again, another piece of allowing that access is making sure the user has access in the first place. And I think this is, again, goes to that usability piece. We want to make sure that users have access to all of the resources they need from day one to get started in their jobs. But we also want to make sure they have only access to the things that they need. So by automating provisioning and deprovisioning, we're ensuring that users can get up and running from day one, but that they're also assigned the correct resources for their role and their team. And then, of course, on the reverse, if that user does change roles or if they leave the organization, that we're automating that deprovisioning. So we're eliminating latent access to resources and also cutting off things like orphan accounts when someone does make a change. And again, lastly here, really talking about that visibility and analytics. So by connecting into those SIMs and those SOARs, you're able to take all of that rich identity data and that contextual data and say, hey, if something is amiss here, how can we take action on it? How can we start to remediate it as quickly as possible? And what that really allows us to do is to take that bigger concept of zero trust, which involves a lot of different technologies to really round out your zero trust strategy and distill it into this really simple but powerful starting point, which is ensuring that the right people have that right level of access to the right resources in the right context and that we're assessing it continuously. And of course, doing so again with the least amount of friction possible, because if we do have a good understanding of risk, we're able to make it even easier for our users to get access to the resources that they do need, and then also prompting for a second factor if something is questionable. So another way of looking at this, and I know this is a bit of a busy slide, so bear with me for a moment, but in that upper left corner, really the foundation of that strategy, this identity piece of your zero trust journey, is beginning with that user and the device and the identity of those two things. And then again, we're pairing it with that rich context. So in the blue, that's what I talked through before, things like the user, their role, the device, location. So that's all things that you can get understanding of within your identity platform. But again, we can also pair that with third-party signals. So from folks like Jamf, what do we know? Is this device managed or unmanaged? And we're able to pair all of those things together and then assign a risk score. So is this potentially anomalous for this user? Or maybe I want to set a specific policy that says this user can only access this resource from a managed device. And again, from there, we then authorize access into all those resources, again, being cloud, on-prem applications, infrastructure, APIs, everything. And lastly, connecting into those SIMs and SOARs so we can take action and remediate as needed. Now, we know this isn't a light switch. Identity isn't a light switch you turn on overnight. And so we've started to sequence this out based on what we're seeing from customers and how they're starting to really implement a modern zero trust approach within their business. And so I won't spend too much time on this, but generally speaking, most organizations that we talk to fall in that stage 0 to stage 1, where they have, potentially an on-prem directory, something like an AD or an LDAP. They're starting to adopt cloud. Those things don't necessarily connect yet. And really their focus is on how do I start to implement modern SSO? How do I start to add that modern MFA on top and really unify policies across everything in their ecosystem? As we move into stage 2 and stage 3, that's where we really start to see things like adding in that contextual-based access policy, automating provisioning and deprovisioning, and then ultimately getting to that point of really fully assessing risk and then delivering things like a passwordless access when risk is low. So it's a journey. We have some great partners here that are going to talk a little bit more about how we can start to pair this across your entire system. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to jump in on some more of the devices piece.
Thanks, Kelsey. And again, thanks to everyone for joining us today. In this section, I do want to talk a bit about how we can think about extending trust beyond the user. So we heard a little bit earlier in the presentation that when thinking about that contextual access management, that the device the user attempts to authenticate from is something that's considered. And so questions like, does this device have a valid certificate? Is this the first time that the user has attempted to authenticate from this device? If so, does it make sense to provide that second factor of authentication that Kelsey mentioned before granting the access that's being requested? And it's that first question that I'd like to explore a little bit further. Does this device have a valid certificate or machine identity? And first, though, maybe it might make sense to provide a bit of background and answer the question that you might be thinking, well, what is a machine identity? And so for that, we have really a little bit of background first. So there are two actors really on every single network out there. Machine identities are critical to security and availability, and they tend to be underprotected. And to understand why, you have to first understand about those two actors. And so we have really, again, people and machines on organization networks throughout the industry. People rely on usernames and passwords to identify themselves and gain access to machines, applications, devices. But machines don't. They use something called machine identities. And they use those to gain access and authenticate and secure communications between other machines, right? And so organizations typically spend about $10 billion every year protecting these human identities, and really only now over the past few years starting to think about protecting machine identities in the same way. And actually what this does is present a fundamental security gap, because the bad guys out there are realizing this as well. And so they spend more of their time and their resources dedicated to compromising and stealing these machine identities. And so really in any complete identity and access management program, it's important to secure both the identities of people and machines. But again, really what exactly is a machine identity? Machine identities are things like SSL and TLS certificates, which can take the information that you provide to a browser, for example, and encrypt it as it's transported back to your bank's website. You have things like SSH keys, which are used when one machine or human needs to interact with another machine, typically to transfer files, batch process, or perform other usually automated tasks. You have things like code signing certificates, which are going to validate the authenticity of code and prevent tampering of that executable so that users can trust the software that they install and download and use every day. And then finally, we have mobile and device certificates that can help answer that contextual question from earlier. They are able to prove that that device is attempting to authenticate from a legitimate source, right? And so we heard earlier that identity and access management are really at the core of zero trust. And we're seeing organizations start to understand that machine identity management really should be a part of the broader identity and access management operations and security processes. In true zero trust environments, each machine really needs to have its own identity as well. And there must be a system of record in place that can be referenced on demand to validate that that machine's identity is legitimate. Is the certificate being presented a known certificate? Has it been issued according to a policy that was set by the info security or the PKI team? Is the certificate still valid? And if so, for how long? What is the process to ensure that that certificate is renewed and provisioned before it expires and starts to affect business processes? And so I want to talk a little bit about what is required in a true combination zero trust environment managing both human and machine identities. And so a recent Gartner report indicated that organizations with over 200 certificates throughout their infrastructure need to invest in some type of automation to protect themselves. But over half of enterprises manually track keys and certificates, and another quarter use homegrown solutions. And these methods don't support the volume and velocity needed to keep pace with the explosive growth of machines. They don't scale, and they don't provide the automation or remediation needed to quickly find and replace a compromised machine identity if that occurs. And so really for effective machine identity management, organizations need three main capabilities: visibility, intelligence, and automation. And so we start with visibility into really all of the machine identities across a hybrid IT enterprise. With this visibility, you get awareness of the current state of your keys and certificates and enable a centralized inventory. And then with that intelligence about the machine identities, you can start to set consistent security policies across the business and customize by use case when needed. Detailed intelligence on those machine identity attributes allows for policy enforcement, workflow management, comprehensive reporting, and meaningful analytics that Kelsey mentioned in your SIM and SOAR tools. And really that third piece, automation, is critical and should be built into your key and certificate provisioning and lifecycle processes. When integration with the broader IT ecosystem is based on this automation, you really make machine identity management part of that broader IAM operation and security process. And so for device security, again, I really just want to reiterate that device security is a critical layer in the zero trust architecture that we're discussing today. If you're using a mobile device management or MDM solution like Jamf, you can take advantage of native Apple security features, such as enforcing encryption and passcodes, running policies to turn on file vault, restricting malicious software, and patching all Apple devices are really great ways to secure the devices within a centralized place for the admins to not only monitor those devices, but also push remote security commands and take immediate action if a security incident were to occur. And now I'm going to pass it back to Kaylee to discuss how organizations can actually start to implement this zero trust model.
Great. Thanks, Paul. So today we've talked about why zero trust is important, the core principles of zero trust and how it's evolved. And we've discussed identity-based access as the focus of zero trust. And we've also talked about the importance of device security alongside users. So between device security and MDM, access and identity management, cloud identity, endpoint management, you really have a lot of different aspects of zero trust to think about. So let's talk about a few solutions that can help you begin your journey to implementing and achieving a zero trust model. So just as zero trust components put people at the focal point, organizations must consider their users' experience almost as much as the security itself. The priorities are no longer security first and user experience second, but more as a 1A, 1B approach. Jamf, Okta, and Venafi can help put both security and a great user experience at the top of the priority list for organizations. So with Okta Identity Cloud and Jamf Connect, organizations can ensure a high level of user trust by unifying identity across apps and devices through seamless single sign-on. The integration of these two solutions provides benefits of things like provisioning and authentication out of the box. So we talked about how provisioning is an important part or step to ensuring users have exactly what they need and should have access to, and nothing more than that. So Jamf Connect allows admins to pre-provision devices and create just-in-time local MAC accounts with a user's cloud identity credentials, which ensures that a single cloud identity is used to access everything needed for that user to be productive. Jamf Connect with Okta also enables multi-factor authentication at both the MAC account level and for applications as well when needed. And then keeping cloud-based credentials in sync. So we talked about, and we know that passwords pose a security threat, which is why Jamf Connect keeps cloud-based credentials in sync across the device and applications, which we know also provides a better end user experience by reducing the number of credential-related support tickets for IT, and it just keeps users productive. And then finally, passwordless access to business critical apps. So users will be able to access everything they need once they have authenticated, which eliminates the number of times they must enter credentials to each and every application or service. So utilizing SSO wherever possible also helps eliminate security risks with those multiple passwords, while also providing a great end user experience. So this pair of Okta and Jamf Connect provides a bird's eye view into all users and access, making it easy for admins to know who is accessing their machines, from where and when, so they can always monitor and act if any suspicious activities were to occur. So Jamf Connect pairs with most mobile device management solutions, but when combined with Jamf Pro and with Okta, IT has the ability to prevent an unmanaged, untrustworthy Mac or user from accessing corporate apps and important information. So Okta's capabilities allow admins to require users to leverage only known and secure devices to access an organization's most important asset, which is its data. So these three combined means users log in, they have their credentials verified, and they're able to gain seamless secure access in the form of a triple-layered security fortress wherever they're set up to work. Using an identity provider like Okta means you can centrally and remotely manage users, groups, passwords, and access to resources in a secure manner with cloud, along with the leveraging of provisioning and multi-factor authentication with Jamf Connect. So taking device security one step further, Venafi now integrates with Jamf Pro. So Venafi's trust protection platform turns management of TLS-based trust certificates, which act as machine identities that Paul just talked about, into a streamlined, simple process with Jamf Pro. So with this integration, a multitude of certificates can be automatically issued or revoked for thousands of devices. Configuration profiles and flexible scoping allow stored certificate configurations to be applied to specific groups of alike devices. At the same time, Venafi's platform for special custom policies to be managed as well, or allows for custom policies to be managed as well, enabling flexibility for unique certificate use cases. This allows either corporate-owned or BYOD devices to all share the same secure baseline level of trust before they're granted access to things like Wi-Fi, VPN, or other organizational resources, bringing high-speed, high-scale identity security to your machines and devices, completing that full circle of zero trust efforts. So on top of all of this, Jamf Protect is developed exclusively for macOS, providing a complete solution to maintain endpoint compliance, monitor for, respond to, and then remediate security incidents on macOS with minimal impact to the device and to the end user experience. So whatever it is that your zero trust journey looks like, wherever you are at in that maturity curve that Kelsey talked about, we'd like to help. So whether you have employees that are in the office or they're remote, we can help with identity, device security, so that your users have everything they need when they need it. And IT feels confident and knows there's a high level of security, regardless of where a user accesses their resources from. So we're here to help you give your users that flexibility they're looking for, while you know that your data, your users' identities, and their devices are secure. So if you want to learn more about any of these solutions, please visit us at our websites, jamf.com, okta.com, or venafi.com. And then also make sure to check out the ebook that's attached to this session as a leave behind that discusses how these 3 solutions can help organizations achieve that zero trust model. So thanks again for tuning in. We'd love to hear your feedback on this session by completing the survey in the widget below, and have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of JNUC.